The initial college football rankings were released on Tuesday. Top two teams, both in the Big Ten. Oregon, Ohio State, 1 and 2. Remember, top four bids go to conference champs. So if the season ended today, the four byes would be Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and number 9 BYU, the current leader in the Big 12. Joseph, what was the biggest thing that jumped out to you when seeing these rankings for the first time?
Strength of schedule. Strength of schedule is something they weight heavily. Indiana is an undefeated team. They're blowing people out. They're sitting behind a Tennessee team with a loss. They're sitting behind a Penn State team with a loss. They're sitting behind a Texas team with a loss. Texas hasn't beaten anybody yet, but good strength of schedule because they lost to Georgia. Penn State hasn't beaten anybody yet, but good strength of schedule because they lost to Ohio State. Tennessee does have a quality win. They're a shaky team. More on that later. But Indiana's plus 170 to miss the playoff. The committee is telling you flat out, the only reason they're in the ranking right now is because they're undefeated, but they're not ahead of these one-loss teams because they haven't played anyone. They play someone, one team in 3 weeks, Ohio State. They lose that game, they're out. They're not going to the conference championship, and I don't think they're going to get any love. And quite frankly, the committee, and sorry Indiana fans, doesn't want you there, right? They want the big power programs, big name teams from the Big Ten, big name teams. We got to handicap this that way, though.
No,
that's the thing.
This
is not handicapping a win total and looking at strength of schedule the rest of the way, right? Well, this is about handicapping a committee. It's handicapping humans. You handicap this like the MVP race, not like you would handicap a win total. So we got to think. They showed us exactly what they're thinking with Indiana. If you believe Ohio State beats them, they're going to.
So their season comes down to that Ohio State game. They win that.
That's the only game that'll matter.
Fine. If they lose it, that is it. All right.
All right, that right here is Sam Acho, and he's here because the first college football playoff ranking came out this week. We have a lot we need to sort through. Very exciting time, a lot of opportunity because just like the bookmakers, we're all going through this for the first time. Let's start with this. You're Longhorn.
Yeah.
I'm going to need you to be impartial here.
Sure.
This is a tough question.
Yeah.
One loss, no marquee wins yet, a loss to A&M in the finale. That'd be a 2-loss Texas team. Chance they miss the playoff?
There's an absolute chance they miss the playoff, but
Yes.
I think that they still make it just right on the precipice. The reason why, if Texas loses to A&M, that would be 2 ranked losses, one versus A&M, one versus Georgia. But the bigger deal is there's no marquee wins. But the committee's going to be looking at this Texas team and saying, okay, do they pass the eye test? How did they do earlier in the season? Of course, when they beat Michigan, Michigan was ranked. Vanderbilt, depending how Vanderbilt ends up, that could be a marquee win if Vanderbilt wins out. And so I think Texas would still make it, but it would be closer to that 11 and 12 spot rather than in the top 5, 6, or 7.
So much of this for sports bettors is going to be handicapping the voters, the committee, right? This is like voting for the MVP or betting on the MVP or coach of the year. This is not a market that can be determined by, hey, we're 3 games back. We need to win the next 3 to win the division, right? This is going to be exactly what you're talking about. What are these committee members going to think? And Texas, even without the marquee wins, big brand, right? Everything's bigger in Texas. That's the thing. I would love to play 6-1, but I just think even with 2 losses, they're going to want to win. All right. Now, on the other side of that is Indiana. Undefeated, toast to the town. Ranking shows strength of schedule really does matter. One big game is coming up in 3 weeks. It's Ohio State. If they lose that game, I see them out. I like the plus 170. Would they be out with 1 loss?
It depends how they lose. Here's why I say that. The committee showed that how people lose matters. Look at Oregon, number 1, and Ohio State, number 2. Ohio State had that 1-point loss or that close loss to Oregon. So if Indiana gets blown out by Ohio State, then you'll say, okay, the one true test, you failed miserably. But if Indiana keeps it close, just like we saw Boise State keep it close versus Oregon, if Indiana keeps it close versus Ohio State and plays them tough, then I still believe there's a chance that they would actually make the playoff. This Indiana team is one of the top offenses in all of college football. They're top 5 in offense, top 7 in defense. So they're passing the eye test. Their strength of schedule has been weak, but if they play tough against their tough opponent, the people on their schedule, there is a chance, and I believe that Indiana would be in.
All right, I like that. If you lose, make it look good.
Yes.
Give the committee a reason to get behind you because, again, Penn State hasn't beaten anyone, but it's a 1-score loss to Ohio State, and we know where they are in the rankings. LSU, Alabama, they renew their hatred this weekend. Alabama right now 2.5. This was 3, so that's a significant move on LSU. Alabama has been favored 18 straight times in this game. Last time they were a dog was Nick Saban's first year on the job. How do you like this one?
I like Alabama in this one. You might say, man, Alabama, the same Alabama that's been up and that's been down.
Yeah.
Yes, but so has LSU, at least defensively. LSU, their last game versus A&M, they looked great in the first half, but then second half, they started giving up more and more yards and more points. Also turned the ball over in the second half. I think that Alabama will be able to find the consistency offensively to be able to exploit some of the struggles with LSU's defense. So I like Alabama in this one. It may not be pretty, but I think they'll get the dub.
Brian Kelly talked after that loss to A&M how bad they were trying to defend a mobile quarterback. Jalen Milroe can run, rushing prop 44.5 yards. Do you think Milroe goes over that, or do you think the Tigers kind of figure out their problem?
I think Milroe goes over it. It may not be on 5, 6, or 7 runs, but Jalen Milroe, all he needs is one. All he needs is one. And we saw LSU last week. They gave up a few big runs, right? They look great, but 3 or 4 big runs. If you're lack discipline, just one time, Jalen Milroe can make you pay, specifically on the edges. And so I think that Jalen Milroe will go over that 44 yards because of the lack of discipline, just 1 or 2 times that it takes from LSU's defense. And they've shown it on tape.
That's a good point. It just takes one. College football, you can see a massive breakdown on defense. You talk about up and down. Georgia, very up and down as well. Great win at Texas. We've seen some shaky play at Alabama. They survived Florida last week in a game where the Gators end up covering. Laying 2.5 at Ole Miss. What do you like here?
Man, I think it's going to be a close game. And the reason why is this. Ole Miss's defense, they're number 1 in the nation in sacks, getting pressure on the quarterback. Well, when Carson Beck gets pressured, he throws picks. The last 2 games, he's thrown 3 picks in each of them. The only issue is this. As much as Ole Miss wants to bring pressure, and as much as Carson Beck turns the ball over, Florida could not capitalize. So will Jackson Dart and this offense be able to capitalize on the pressure? And the one thing we're not talking about is Georgia's defense.
Yeah.
Right? Will they be able to show up? Ole Miss, Jackson Dart last week, 6 touchdowns. But this is Georgia, and this is the dog. So I think it'll be close. I think Georgia actually wins it, but it may not look pretty.
I want to talk total and scoring there. You talk about Georgia's defense. They're fantastic. They should eat a little bit against an Ole Miss offensive line that's been hit or miss. Ole Miss is coming off a 60-plus point outburst in that matchup against Arkansas, but they've struggled against the SEC. Over/under for this game. It's around mid-50s.
I think it's going to be under that. Yeah,
game?
under, and mainly because of that Georgia defense. I don't think Jackson Dart's going to put up as many points as he has in the years past.
All right, now obviously the graphics people very excited because they got the Colorado up here early. They want everyone to hear about Coach Prime coming off a bye. Very interesting spot. You and I used to talk about this last year. Off a bye, off a huge win against Iowa State. Open Colorado -2. Nothing but money on the Buffs to put it through the key number to 4. Do we trust the Buffs?
I do. I trust the Buffs,
All
and
right.
it's not just because of Shedeur Sanders, their quarterback, nor is it because of Travis Hunter. I like their running game as well. Shedeur Sanders is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. People talk about him being potentially one of the first quarterbacks off the board. Travis Hunter could win a Heisman. But they're actually committing not just to passing it, but also to running it. They're playing better defensively. And so this Colorado team is sitting at 6-2 with an opportunity to win the Big 12. They're 3rd right now behind BYU and Iowa State. And there are a couple tiebreaker situations and scenarios that could play out. But the only way they play out is if Colorado not only wins, but beats Texas Tech because of those tiebreaker scenarios. So I like the Buffs because of their discipline, their consistency, and how they've changed the way they've played. Not just throwing it, but running the rock.
Defensively, they're 30th in the country in scoring D. Like, no one talks about it, but they're playing a little bit of defense. Texas Tech is outside the top 100. Colorado team total might be in play for this one as well.
How much? How much?